A little over 3 years ago, a young man named Marcus moved into a small apartment building on the edge of a quiet suburban neighborhood. It wasn't the safest area, but it wasn't the worst either. The kind of place where people kept to themselves, nodded politely in the hallway, and pretended not to hear the couple next door arguing at 3 a.m. What made Marcus choose that building wasn't the price or the location or even the vibe. It was the simple fact that it was the only place available on short notice. He had just ended a relationship, needed to move fast and wasn't picky. He didn't meet many of the neighbors at first. People came and went at odd hours. But there was one person that everyone seemed to mention in passing, an old man named Mr. Halden who lived in apartment 3B. The man who supposedly never caused trouble, but also never talked to anyone. A quiet, lonely retiree. Or at least, that's who he used to be. According to the landlord, Mr. Halden had moved out just a week before Marcus moved in. No forwarding address. No explanation. Just gone. And yet, within Marcus's first month living there, he started noticing things. Small things. Things that didn't make sense. Every time Marcus walked past the door to 3B, he swore he heard shuffling on the other side. Soft, slow footsteps. A faint dragging sound across old carpet. Sometimes a cough. Sometimes the creak of someone sitting or standing. But the unit was supposed to be empty. At first, Marcus told himself it was just the building settling. Old pipes. Echoes from another floor. The excuses people feed themselves when they don't want to think too much about the weirdness around them. But the sounds continued. Always subtle. Always at night. Always behind the door of the empty apartment. One night, after coming home from a late shift, Marcus saw something new. Faint light seeping out from under the door of 3B. A warm, dim glow like from a lamp. He paused outside the door listening. Someone was definitely inside. A soft thud came from the far end of the room, followed by a quiet, shaky exhale. The kind of breath a person makes when they're trying not to be heard. Marcus knocked lightly. "Hello? Is someone in there?" The light under the door flickered. Then, silence. Not the silence of an empty room, but the heavy, tense kind that fills the air when someone is deliberately holding their breath. Marcus stepped back. A chill crawled up his spine. He went to his apartment, locked the door, and didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, he went to the landlord's office. He told her someone was in 3B. She gave him a tired laugh. "No, sweetheart. Nobody's in there. Old Halden moved out. Unit's empty. Trust me, if someone was inside, I'd know." But the landlord didn't bother checking. She didn't even look up from her paperwork. Marcus decided to let it go. Maybe he was imagining it. Stranger things had happened during stressful breakups. But 2 days later, things escalated. At about 3 in the morning, Marcus was woken by a loud crash. He sat up in bed, heart pounding. It had come from the hallway. Or more specifically, from the direction of 3B. He slowly approached his door and pressed his ear against it. Someone was moving through the hallway. Slow, dragging steps. Thump, scrape, thump, scrape. Marcus held his breath as the steps grew louder. And then they stopped. Right outside his door. Not moving. Just standing there. Listening. Marcus forced himself to stay silent. Minutes passed. Eventually, the steps continued slowly away, fading back toward the opposite end of the hall. Marcus waited 10 more minutes before opening his door. There was nothing. No person, no shadow. But on the floor, right in front of his doorframe, lay a long, stringy piece of gray hair. Coarse. Curled like it had fallen from someone leaning over the floor. The next morning, Marcus finally ran into one of the neighbors, an older woman named Mrs. Clark. She'd lived there nearly 30 years. Marcus brought up apartment 3B. When she realized which unit he meant, she immediately grew tense. Her voice dropped. "You don't hear things from that place, do you?" Marcus hesitated. "Sometimes." Mrs. Clark swallowed hard. "That apartment always had problems. Even before you moved in. Even when old Halden lived there. He'd complain about hearing footsteps inside his own walls. Voices whispering at night. Scratching from the vents. Nobody believed him." She took a breath. "But here's the thing. A few weeks before he supposedly moved out, I saw him in the laundry room. He looked terrible. Eyes sunken. Clothes filthy. Like he hadn't slept in days." Marcus asked what he'd said. Her face tightened. "He told me someone else was living in his apartment. Someone he couldn't find. Someone who only came out at night." She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. For the next month, Marcus avoided the third-floor hallway unless absolutely necessary. The sounds continued every few nights. Soft footsteps. Sudden thuds. The faint shuffling of someone moving slowly around inside 3B. But the worst part? Sometimes when Marcus got home from work, he found long scratches along the frame of his door. Thin, but deliberate. As if someone had dragged their nails across the wood while passing by. Or maybe while standing there. Watching. Then came the morning a maintenance worker left the hallway completely shaken. He had been assigned to begin clearing out 3B so it could finally be renovated and relisted. He lasted 5 minutes inside. Marcus saw him sprint down the hall, pale as a ghost, dropping his tool bag behind him. All he said was, "There's someone still living in there. I don't care what the system says, someone never left." He quit the same day. The landlord tried to brush it off, but word traveled quickly among the tenants. Several began to complain about weird noises at night. The building felt heavier, colder, like someone was watching, waiting. Eventually, the landlord scheduled an official walkthrough with 2 maintenance workers, a property inspector and a police officer, just to be safe. Marcus wasn't meant to see what happened next, but he heard it. The group entered 3B around noon. At first, everything was quiet. Then came a loud crash, a yell, the unmistakable sound of someone retching. The police officer came out first, covering his mouth, shaking his head. "No one's in there," he muttered. "Not anymore." But Marcus could see the truth in his eyes. Someone had been there. Someone had been there for a long time. The maintenance workers carried out what was left inside later that afternoon. Old blankets, a broken lamp, an empty food can. A filthy mattress shoved into the back of the bedroom closet. But the most disturbing thing, according to the inspector, was what they found in the walls. Hidden makeshift crawlspaces. Dozens of them. Some barely wide enough for a grown man to squeeze through. Others extending deep between units, connecting to vents, electrical shafts, and structural cavities. Long, winding paths that stretched further than the building's blueprints claimed they should. Someone had carved out an entire secret world inside that apartment. A world only they lived in. A world only they knew. The police claimed the person had likely left through one of the crawlspaces when they heard people entering. They said it wasn't a crime, and that if the person was homeless or mentally ill, they more than likely just fled the moment the commotion started. But Marcus knew better. He remembered the footsteps in the hallway at night. The breathing behind the door. The hair on the floor. The scratches near his apartment. Whoever had been living in 3B had been watching the tenants for months, maybe years. Slipping through the walls, the vents, the crawlspaces like an animal. Listening. Observing. Waiting. But the part that bothered Marcus the most, the part he didn't tell the police, was something he found the evening after the authorities left. When he returned home from work, he noticed something odd. A new scratch on his doorframe. Not old. Not worn. Fresh. But this time, the scratch wasn't horizontal like someone dragging their hand along the wood. It was vertical. A single, deliberate mark. And right below it, faint indentations. 4 of them. Like fingertips. Pressed into the wood. Marcus stood there staring at it for a long time, the hallway feeling colder, quieter than usual. Because he knew what it meant. Whoever had been inside 3B hadn't left the building. They had just picked a new neighbor to live behind. And Marcus lived right next door. That night, as he tried to sleep, he heard something. A soft sound. A faint scraping. Coming from inside his bedroom wall. Very slow. Very deliberate. As if someone was dragging their fingers along the other side. Checking the edges. Feeling for weak points. Exploring. And then, a whisper. So faint he almost missed it. "Don't tell." Marcus didn't sleep at all. He moved out 3 days later. But to this day, that apartment building still has a vacancy in 3B. The landlord claims it's officially empty. But every so often, a new tenant reports the same thing. A dim light under the door. A cough from inside the room. Soft breathing through the walls. Someone sliding quietly through the darkness. Because Mr. Halden may have moved out. But someone else? Someone who learned to hide. Someone who learned the perfect place to live without being seen? They never left at all. And they're still waiting for the next neighbor who isn't paying attention.